In 1990, Brian Mulroney's numbers were dropping. According to the secret letters of Brian Mulroney, Lucien Bouchard was fired as a Minister of the Environment and left the party. Bouchard contends that he left the party out of disgust for Brian Mulroney. Regardless, Bouchard left the party with a coalition of Liberals and PCs to try and defeat the Meech Lake Accord. Included in the initial party were Nicolas Blanc, Louis Plamondon, Benoit Tremblay, Gilbert Chadran, François Girin, Gilles Rouchelot, and Jean Lapierre. The group makes an agreement that they would only form a temporary party that would disband once a referendum had passed to separate Quebec from Canada. This new group would call itself the Bloq Quebecois and would run its first candidate in 1990 by-election in the Laurier-Saint-Marie. A union organizer named Gilles Duceppe would win this first seat and become the first BQ member of Parliament. At the same time, another party in Alberta had won a by-election, the Reform Party. In the 1993 election, the Reform Party split up the right-wing vote, causing giant splinters of parties across the country. The PCs, Reform, and NDP all received small numbers of seats. The BQ, however, had won 54 of the 75 seats, making them the official opposition. As official opposition, they would get more opportunities to speak and more opportunities to control the debate in question period. It gave them more power in committees and gave their voice more strength than they would ever know. Lucien Bouchard declared that the BQ MPs would only speak French. Although all the founding members of the BQ were perfectly bilingual, new members were not. The separatist movement had declared a strategy called the Three Periods, named after hockey. The first period was electing a large number of Bloq Quebecois candidates in a federal election. This was accomplished. In the 1995 period, two would happen: the election of a separatist provincial government, the Parti Quebecois. All that remained now was period 3, holding a referendum. Being the official opposition gave Bouchard a strong platform. Bill Clinton visited Canada in 1995, and as official opposition, he was able to speak with the president and discuss the possibility of Quebec separatism. In the same year the referendum was on, Bouchard signed an agreement with the PQ and a Quebec opposition party, Action Démocratique du Québec, in favor of promoting separatism. Bouchard would be the leader of an independent Quebec if separation passed. However, the federal government spent millions of dollars in pro-Canada advertising in Quebec, in what later became known as the sponsorship scandal, or ad scam. The referendum lost by a very narrow margin. 50.4% of Quebecois voted against separation. The loss saw the leader of the PQ step down. Lucien Bouchard left as BQ leader to become Premier of Quebec. The BQ struggled with a replacement. The first attempt was Michael Gauthier. He resigned after a few months. Gilles Duceppe stepped up to the mantle and stayed on as leader. Keeping together a coalition of left and right-wing separatists was difficult, and many were leaving. In 1997, Duceppe's bloc would place third overall, losing 6 seats. The Reform Party under Preston Manning would form the official opposition. This meant that the bloc would no longer force the debate on separatism and no longer make things a national issue. Over time, their relevance would dissolve. In 2000, the party's parliamentary numbers would dip to 38. Jean Lapierre defected back to the Liberals and becomes a minister and Quebec lieutenant under Paul Martin. The party would have completely fallen apart, if not for one thing: the sponsorship scandal. The Liberals had been paying firms during the referendum to run pro-Canada advertisements. The government had been receiving money back from those firms. They gave contracts in the form of donations. Some of these firms didn't even make commercials. They were just shell companies taking money to donate back to the party. This leads to a very large drop in Liberal Party support across the board. The Bloc pick up a large number of seats and are now large enough to tip the balance of power of support in Parliament. Duceppe, however, doesn't push for a referendum, as he requires the Parti Quebecois to be in power in Quebec with a separatist candidate. Instead, the party repurposes itself as a Quebec First Party, which would act to get a better deal for Quebec on everything. But this would be the final hurrah of the party. During the Harper years, Harper's unusual friendliness to Quebec would lead to the slow decimation of the Bloc. Harper made an open declaration that the Quebecois were a unique nation within Canada. By 2011, the Bloc had been brought down to just 4 members. The NDP had successfully swallowed up all Bloc support in Quebec under a separatism-friendly platform. Duceppe resigned from the party. This inevitably would lead to the party splitting into 2. Forces a democracy. Both new parties would only ever have 2 members. Although the Bloc is still alive today, it is a shell of its old self. It's almost certain that in 2019, this party will just stop existing.